There's a huge political side of this domestically. We bring in California Republican Congressman Mike Garcia, 20 years as Navy carrier pilot, including during Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003, joins us now. Obviously, we're at an inflection point, Congressman, but should we be surprised that we're here?
No, not surprised. I think this is a confluence of a couple scenarios coming to fruition. One, you've got a dictatorial leader in the form of Putin who sees this annexation as a bit of a manifest destiny. This is something that since 1991 and the fall of the Soviet Union, he's been craving. He was an operative under the KGB, and this is what he sees as his right to take these territories back. When you combine that, in our case, with a commander-in-chief who has proven to be exceptionally weak over the course of the last year, unfortunately, we have the perfect storm and the conditions that Putin has been looking forward to. And I think Dimitri's right. There's not much leverage we have here, but the world is watching, and they are expecting us to follow through on any threats that we make or any leverage that we impart, and actually follow through on the sanctions and anything that we look to actually do. You're
saying that President Biden is incredibly weak, therefore he's not doing the things he could or should be doing to stop this. But at the same time, Dimitri's right, we don't have any leverage. So is it really Joe Biden's fault?
It's not necessarily Joe Biden's fault. Let's keep in mind that the fault of all of this is certainly Putin. This is not behavior that you would expect from any leader of any nation. It's not necessarily rational either. But he does have his red lines, and he does know that Article 5 within NATO constraints is that red line, and we will defend our NATO partners. And so he can take the grounds up to the edges of the western border of Ukraine with probably not much resistance. But frankly, the reality is he's been watching the behavior out of the West. He's been watching the behavior out of this president, and he recognizes that now is the time to strike, and that he does actually see this as a manifest destiny for Russia and what is effectively a reclaiming of territories that they sought from hundreds of years ago. This is akin to the United Kingdom saying they want to take back Massachusetts and Maine as a result of their territorial claims, and it's not right. Unfortunately, it is his mission right now, and he's looking for some sort of opposition to stand up, and we're not getting that out of NATO right now. We're not seeing that out of Biden as well.
Well, and also, in fairness to the president, if you're going to try to do something as NATO, you've got to have France and Germany signing on to that. And so far, they're not. Who needs friends? Who needs enemies when you have friends like President Macron and the Chancellor of Germany at this point?
Yeah.
I keep coming back to this. And look, I have not been a huge supporter. I've certainly been very skeptical of President Biden's foreign policy. But on this one, unless you're really willing to go it alone and put U.S. troops in, is there anything you could do to stop it?
There's not. I think he's got to be a little more proactive in the communique, especially with our eastern partners. It would be in our interest to see Chancellor Scholz of Germany to take the lead on this and show the leadership as well. But look, the weakness that was shown relative to Nord Stream 2 early on was a lever that we had, and
we gave that up.
This president unfortunately did roll over on that early on, and that is an economic as well as an energy asset that Putin now has at as a tool that effectively enables this type of military progression on his western front and allows him to stay in place without having to worry about the energy crisis affecting his own troops, and this is unfortunately one of the contributing factors to his decisions to move now and not, say, 3 years from now.
Congressman, I got to get you on this. You were quoted in a Wall Street Journal op-ed piece that was fascinating about the readiness of U.S. military pilots. You used to be one. Pilots getting far fewer hours than commercial airline pilots, barely being competent and proficient in being able to bring the fight to the enemy, if you will.
Right.
Flight time for fighter pilots, 200 hours needed to stay sharp. Average among pilots in 2020, 131 hours. Cost cutting at the Pentagon because of gas prices and the like. Does Vladimir Putin view the U.S. military in the way, say, he did back in 2006, 7, 8, or for that matter, 2017, 18 during President Trump's buildup?
Yeah, I think he does. I think at a macro level, we still have the capacity and the quality of a military force to overcome Russia alone. I think the real problem right now that we have, and the true existential threat to the United States, is the Chinese communist regime. They are actually growing at a rate that is outpacing us. They're investing in the capacity as well as the quality. And when I talk about a lack of training, especially on the tactical side and our fighter pilots being a part of that domain, it's relative to the Chinese threat. And what we see now is Chairman Xi out of China cooperating with Vladimir Putin in this case, and they are trading notes, they're trading strategies and tactics. And we've got to be prepared for a two-front war, and that's not the fight that we, frankly, are ready for right now. And our training has not been invested in as a result of sequestration, budget control acts going back over the last 10 years. And the global war on terror is a different threat than what Chinese and Russia pose to the United States right now.
Yeah, you make a great point. The doctrine used to be able to fight two near-peer adversaries at the same time. Congressman, tour de force as you took us around the world. Scary but important. Thank you, sir. Good to see you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thanks,
we
Leland.
appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.